generously extended So coming nose to nose with magnitude led the author Mason Curry to wonder how composers, novelists, playwrights, painters, philosophers, and scientists have made time to do what they do. In his own life, he observed, he can barely manage to stay on top of the laundry. He wrote, all of us have the same 24 hours a day to do the things we need and want to do. So do remarkably accomplished people have fewer daily commitments? Are they more efficient, more driven, or more disciplined? Where do they find the time? Curry studied the daily routines and rituals of 161 artists, and Beethoven was one of them. It turns out that Beethoven was an early morning riser. His breakfast consisted of coffee. His ritual was to count out 60 coffee beans per cup to get just the right dose of caffeine. He would compose until his midday meal, and then he would take a long, vigorous walk. He carried pencils and sheets of music paper in his pocket. Perhaps this accounts in part for all the sounds in nature which he incorporated into his compositions. In the evenings, he would stop at a tavern to read the newspapers. Then he would have a simple supper, followed by a glass of beer and a pipe. Beethoven was always in bed by 10 p.m. Oh, and he washed compulsively by pouring pitchers of water over himself, which regularly flooded the apartment below his. Eventually, the landlord sealed his floor with concrete. For the record, the ritual most common to all the artists Mason Curry studied was taking long walks. But of course, as Tracy reminded us, this is not primarily what we remember about Beethoven's genius. What we remember is that he began losing his hearing at the age of 28. Legend has it that he cut off the legs of his piano so it would either rest in his lap or he and the piano would both be on the floor, and he could feel the vibrations of the music he was composing. By the time Beethoven was 48, he was completely deaf. He imagined the notes in his mind. He could not actually hear them performed. And when he conducted his Ninth Symphony, which includes his Ode to Joy, Beethoven lost track of the music, put the baton down at his side, tears streaming down his face. But the musicians played on, and the lead violinist turned Beethoven around to see the standing ovations, all the handkerchiefs in the air, all the hats and hands raised. This was how Beethoven came face to face, if not nose to nose, with the magnitude of what he had created. A quote attributed to Beethoven is, "I want to seize fate by the throat." And this he did. Robert Fulgham, a Unitarian Universalist minister, writes, "I think about old Mr. B. He knew a whole lot about depression and unhappiness. He moved around from place to place, trying to find the right place. His was a lousy love life, and he quarreled with friends all the time. A rotten nephew worried him deeply, a pianist. He wanted to sing well, too. And out of all that sorrow and trouble, out of all that frustration and disappointment, out of all that deep and permanent silence, came all that majesty, that outpouring of joy and exaltation. He defied his fate with jubilation." Well, Beethoven didn't always defy his fate with jubilation. In his last will and testament, which he wrote at the age of 32, he explained, "I was soon compelled to isolate myself, to live life alone. It was impossible for me to say to people, "Speak louder, shout, for I am deaf." Ah, how could I possibly admit an infirmity in the one sense which ought to be more perfect in me than others, a sense which I once possessed in the highest perfection? Beethoven went on to describe the loneliness and isolation he experienced in these words: "I would have gladly mingled with you. For me there can be no relaxation with my fellow men, no refined conversations, no mutual exchange of ideas. I must live almost alone, like one who has been banished. What a humiliation for me when someone standing next to me heard a flute in the distance, and I heard nothing. Or someone standing next to me heard a shepherd singing, and again, I heard nothing. Such incidents drove me almost to despair. A little more of that, and I would have ended my life. It was only my art that held me back. Though I considered suicide, it seemed to me impossible to leave the world until I had brought forth all that I felt was within me." Beethoven did bring forth all that he felt within himself. He seized fate by the throat. Even though his hearing loss prevented him from performing music publicly, he continued to compose music. A week before his death, he promised the Philharmonic Society a new symphony. And though he was a Freemason, drawn to the Enlightenment's faith in reason, Beethoven died with the conviction that in heaven he would once again hear. As a result, we come nose to nose with magnitude, not just Beethoven's music, but his indomitable spirit. In Fulgen's words, "My solace is not religion, or yoga, or rum, or even deep sleep. It's Beethoven, as in Ludwig van. He's my ace in the hole." Fulgen explains, "I put his Ninth Symphony on the stereo, pull the earphones down tight, and lie down on the floor. The music comes out like the first day of creation. I can never resist all that truth and beauty. I just can't manage to continue sitting around in my winter ash heap, wringing my hands and feeling sorry for myself in the face of that music. Not only does it wipe out spiritual rot, it probably cures colds, too." And when listening to Beethoven, Fulgen asks himself, so what's all this noise about rain and bills and taxes? So who needs all this talk about failure and confusion and frustration? What's all this noise about life and people being no damn good? He concludes, "In the midst of oatmeal days, I find within Beethoven's music an irresistible affirmation." Fulgen's words resonate with me because when my late husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, we created our own Beethoven ritual. We didn't listen to the Ninth Symphony. We sat down at the piano and opened Beethoven Sonata Volume 1 to the Adagio of the Pathetique. Tom helped me to work out the flats and a few sharps. Some of them went way down. I knew that 12 years ago, but what is that today? And he helped me with the fingering. We took it measure by measure. And when you're literally taking one day at a time, there can be no more fitting ritual. During World War II, a group of women discovered a similar ritual. Many had been missionaries in Asia. They were being interred by the Japanese as prisoners of war in Sumatra. So what did they do? They turned themselves into a vocal orchestra. Margaret Dryberg explained, "The idea of making ourselves into a vocal orchestra came to us when songs were difficult to remember, and we longed to hear again some of the wonderful harmonies and melodies that uplifted our souls in days gone by. Since social gatherings were prohibited, they rehearsed in small groups, secretly. And then all 30 women came together and gave their first performance 2 days after Christmas, 1943. The Japanese guards were ordered to break up the gathering, but awestruck and captivated by the music, they stopped in their tracks. The concert continued to its finale. Beethoven's Minuet in G was one of the pieces the women sang. Mitsuji Saatomi asks, if you were all alone in the universe, with no one to talk to, no one with which to share the beauty of the stars, to laugh with, to touch, what would be your purpose in life? He answers this rhetorical question with, it is other life, it is love, which gives your life meaning. This is harmony. We must discover the joy of each other, the joy of challenge, the joy of growth. Beethoven seized fate by the throat by refusing to allow his deafness to isolate him from others. He continued to seek to love and be loved with a small group of family and friends, and he continued to create. Inspired by Beethoven's example, Robert Fulgham listens to Beethoven on oatmeal days to remember Beethoven's great cry of yes. Tom and I found meaning simply learning together a simple, single Beethoven composition. The women of the vocal orchestra in the prison of Sumatra discovered the joy of each other, the joy of challenge. Today, Tracy and Janet have shared the joy and hope of Beethoven's Spring Symphony. And today, to affirm the joy of growth, we have dedicated a child to the care and nurture of this religious community. Beethoven thought that the best thing we could give our children is a love of humankind and the desire to do good. Ultimately, it is the love of humankind and the desire to do good that is true magnitude, inspiring us to want to write King Lear, paint the Last Supper, and rebuild the Parthenon. So it is fitting to sing one more time Beethoven's Ode to Joy, only this time with words from the 18th century German poet Friedrich von Schiller. One translation of this poem reads, "Joy, beautiful radiance of the gods, daughter of Elysium, your charms reunite what common use has harshly divided. All people become one under your tender wing." These were the words Beethoven adapted for his Ninth Symphony. He transcended the isolation of his deafness by imagining the music of the spheres, which connects us to ourselves, to the natural world, to others, and to the future we imagine, create, and nurture. In his Ode to Joy, all of us become related under joy's tender wing. So may it be, as we join in singing hymn number 327.
Thank you.
learn the lives of eras gone by. Let us sing the magic of creation, by which we build the world of our soul and teach its wisdom to others, young and old. Let us sing the magic of our lives together, holding and shaping by the movement of breath from heart to lung, all new life that is to come. Go now with singing, go now with magic in your fingertips. Touch this world with life. Amen.